Most people panic when the market crashes. Believers pray for protection, economists debate online, and investors run around trying to predict the next disaster. But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. God is not intimidated by a recession. Heaven doesn't flinch when charts turn red. And if you learn how to think biblically about money, you'll stop flinching too. What scares the world can actually position you, yes, you, to make money with clarity instead of fear. The strange thing is that crises don't just expose weak economies. They expose weak mindsets. They reveal who has been building on sand and who has been building on rock. And while the world races to blame inflation, the dollar, the government, or global instability, Scripture quietly whispers something far more provocative. Every economic storm contains a divine opportunity for those who steward wisely. That's why some people break in a recession, but others break through. You've probably felt the tension yourself. Watching your investments fall, seeing your business slow down, wondering if you'll ever reach the financial future you imagined. But what if the real question isn't how do I survive the crash? What if the better question is, how do I align myself so God can use this crash to sharpen my wisdom and multiply my impact? Recessions create millionaires, but God uses recessions to reveal stewards, and that shift changes everything. If you like our content, consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description. Because once you understand how spiritual principles connect with financial cycles, the fear begins to fade, and something new rises inside you. The confidence that God can guide your money, your business, and your ability to make money even when the world is shaking. And today you're about to see exactly how that works. Why market crashes don't surprise heaven, but they shock your bank account. Here's something most people never stop to consider. Market crashes might shake Wall Street, but they don't shake heaven. Throughout Scripture, economic cycles are as normal as sunrise and sunset. Joseph watched Egypt go from abundance to famine. Ruth lived through national collapse. The prophets ministered in times of inflation, scarcity, and political chaos. Yet in every cycle, God was steady, unchanged, still writing stories of provision. The modern believer forgets this because a red candlestick in the stock market feels louder than the voice of God. When markets fall, most people immediately panic because their money feels exposed. And honestly, it is. A recession has this dramatic way of revealing what we trusted the most: our savings, our business, our ability to make money, or our own intelligence. Proverbs 27:23 says, "Be diligent to know the state of your flocks," and a crash forces you to see exactly what shape your flocks are in. It's uncomfortable, but it's also honest. Heaven isn't shocked by your vulnerability. It's showing you where your foundation really stood. The irony is that believers often pray for God to build their future, but they want Him to build it on markets that never shake. Yet Ecclesiastes 11 reminds us that uncertainty is the soil where wisdom grows. The wise person learns how money moves in storms because storms always return. Historical crashes, 2000, 2008, 2020, each had different triggers, but the same spiritual pattern. Fear spreads, people freeze, and opportunities quietly appear. God doesn't create the chaos, but He does teach His people to think differently inside it. One of the biggest mistakes Christians make is assuming financial crisis equals divine punishment, but Jesus told a parable about a storm that hit both the wise man and the foolish man. The difference wasn't who avoided the storm, it was who prepared their foundation before it arrived. In financial language, that foundation is understanding that cycles come and go, but principles remain. When a believer studies history, they realize what heaven has known all along. Volatility is normal, but panic is optional. Take a practical example. During the 2020 crash, millions froze. But believers with discipline, patience, and a little extra liquidity were able to buy assets on sale. Not because they were greedy, but because they finally understood that God's wisdom doesn't vanish when the market drops 30%. If anything, it becomes even clearer. Reading one chapter of Proverbs a day will teach you more about surviving economic winters than most experts on CNBC. The Bible has always taught that the person who gathers in the summer will have something to lean on in the winter. So before the next topic, here's the truth every kingdom-minded investor must embrace. Heaven sees the crash before you do, but it trains you in advance so that you don't lose your peace when the charts turn red. And once you start seeing crisis through God's lens, not the news, you begin to notice something powerful emerging beneath the fear. Recessions create millionaires, but God uses them to reveal stewards. When people hear the phrase, "recessions create millionaires," they imagine some secret club of investors making absurd amounts of money while everyone else suffers. But from a biblical perspective, the real story is different. A recession doesn't simply create millionaires. It exposes who learned stewardship in the quiet seasons. God never rewards chaos, but he does reward preparation. It's the Joseph principle all over again. The famine didn't make Joseph wise. The famine revealed the wisdom that was already in him before the crisis hit. Most believers underestimate how spiritual stewardship really is. When the economy shakes, God isn't looking for the loudest voice predicting doom. He's looking for the man or woman who manages their business, their money, and their opportunities with integrity. Luke 16:10 says, "Whoever can be trusted with little can also be trusted with much." A recession simply turns that verse into real life. Suddenly, the careless become cautious. The proud become humbled, and the faithful become visible. Crisis reveals character, not just portfolios. Think of 2008. While the world was terrified, a small group of disciplined investors quietly accumulated undervalued assets. They weren't reckless gamblers. They were patient stewards who understood that prices drop, but value remains. The same pattern happens in every downturn. It's not that God magically hands out wealth in bad times. It's that the people who studied, prepared, saved, and stayed calm are now positioned to make money while others react emotionally. Preparation turns volatility into opportunity. Stewardship also shows up in how people give during downturns. Most cut generosity immediately because fear makes the world feel smaller. But Proverbs 11:25 says, "A generous person will prosper." The believer who continues helping others, whether through tithing, teaching, or serving, often finds God multiplying what seems too small to matter. It's not financial magic. It's a spiritual law that the recession cannot cancel. Even in scarcity, the steward's heart produces abundance. To make this practical, imagine someone building a small emergency fund. Nothing fancy, maybe just a few $100s set aside consistently. When a crisis hits, that simple discipline becomes their advantage. They can buy books on investing, acquire new skills, start a micro business, or pick up discounted assets while others scramble. Read The Richest Man in Babylon and Principles by Ray Dalio if you want a crash course on this mindset. They teach exactly what Scripture has already said for thousands of years. Wealth favors the prepared. And here's the quiet truth the world never admits. Recessions don't create greed, they create clarity. They show you whether you've been building wisely or simply drifting. And once you start seeing downturns as tests of stewardship instead of punishments, you begin to understand why God allows certain storms to expose what must grow before he can entrust you with more. From fear to strategy. How a believer should think about money. When markets fall, when markets start sinking and headlines scream panic, most people make the same mistake. They let fear think for them. Fear is a terrible financial advisor. It pushes you to sell at the bottom, hoard instead of plan, and treat every red candle like the end of the world. But Scripture constantly reminds believers to think differently. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind." A sound mind is exactly what's needed when your portfolio looks like a disaster report. A believer's first step in a downturn isn't to check their brokerage app. It's to check their mindset. Markets move in cycles, but fear convinces you that every cycle is a catastrophe. Investors who panic forget that corrections, pullbacks, slowdowns, and recessions are baked into the economic system. The faithful, on the other hand, anchor themselves in truth. Volatility is normal, but their foundation is not the market, it's wisdom. That shift alone can save you from impulsive decisions that destroy your money and your ability to make money long term. Strategic thinking begins with accepting reality instead of resisting it. When Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream, he didn't pray for the famine to disappear. He created a plan. That's what separates believers who thrive during downturns from believers who freeze. A crash isn't a sign to stop moving, it's a sign to move intentionally. Study which sectors hold value, review your expenses, calculate your risk, and strengthen your business systems. Preparation transforms fear into clarity. A practical example, many people saw the 2020 crash as a reason to step back from investing. But those who paused, took a deep breath, and analyzed the situation found opportunities everywhere. Work-from-home companies, certain tech stocks, and even simple index funds were trading at deep discounts. A believer with a strategic mindset could invest small amounts consistently, trusting both history and biblical wisdom. Reading books like The Psychology of Money and Unshakable helps build this disciplined thinking. The believer also understands that fear is loud, but wisdom is steady. Proverbs 14:15 says, "The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps. In a crash, that means understanding your time horizon. If you're investing for the long term, short-term volatility shouldn't dictate your moves. You can adjust, rebalance, diversify, but never panic. Strategy is simply fear that has been put through prayer, patience, and education. And once fear loses its grip, something interesting starts to happen. You begin to see downturns not as attacks but as windows. Windows to learn, windows to buy wisely, windows to improve your stewardship. Because every investor who honors God with their decisions eventually discovers that financial storms, when approached with strategy instead of fear, often reveal pathways that would stay hidden in times of calm. The Joseph Principle: building spiritual and financial storage before the famine. Every believer loves the story of Joseph, but many forget the financial blueprint hidden inside it. God didn't just give Joseph a prophetic dream. He gave him an economic plan. 7 years of abundance, 7 years of famine. That's not just history. It's a divine pattern. The wise believer learns to build storage in seasons of plenty so they're not destroyed in seasons of scarcity. Financially, that looks like savings, liquidity, margin, discipline, and strategic investing. Spiritually, it looks like trust, obedience, gratitude, and avoiding the trap of worshiping money. In Genesis 41, Joseph doesn't celebrate the coming abundance. He prepares for the coming famine. Most modern Christians do the opposite. They celebrate the good economy and ignore the warning signs. They spend instead of save, chase status instead of stewardship, and assume the good times will last forever. Joseph built storage not because he feared the famine, but because he respected the cycle. A believer who understands this principle naturally thinks long-term about their business, their investments, and their calling to make money with purpose. Joseph's plan was simple, yet brilliant. Take a portion from the years of abundance and store it. Today, that might look like setting aside a percentage of income, building a cash reserve, or gradually investing in trustworthy assets instead of burning everything on lifestyle. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Even saving a small amount consistently can position you for opportunities during economic downturns. Books like Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth, and The Millionaire Next Door capture this slow, steady approach that mirrors biblical stewardship. The beauty of Joseph's strategy is that his storage wasn't selfish. It was redemptive. When famine came, Egypt had enough not only for itself, but for others. In other words, preparing well allows you to serve well. A believer with margin can bless families, support ministries, and make money work in ways that align with kingdom impact. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." Preparation isn't a lack of faith. It's an expression of it. Financial storage also gives you emotional stability. When markets fall or business slows, you don't panic. You pivot. Joseph didn't just survive the famine, he thrived because his preparation gave him clarity. The modern believer with storage can make money strategically during market downturns by investing when assets are cheap, expanding their business while competitors retreat, or acquiring skills others can't afford to learn. Storage multiplies options. And here's the part most people overlook. Joseph's preparation positioned him for promotion. The famine didn't break him, it revealed him. The same happens today. Those who honor God with discipline before the crisis are the ones God elevates inside the crisis. And the next topic begins to uncover exactly where opportunities hide when the world starts tightening its belt. Where money hides in a crisis: businesses and assets that still serve people. When a recession hits, most people assume every business collapses and every investor loses money. But that's not true. Crises don't destroy opportunity, they concentrate it. In every economic downturn, there are always sectors, services, and assets that continue to move because people still need them. The believer who understands this stops chasing hype and starts studying human behavior. Proverbs 22:3 says, "The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty." In a crash, refuge isn't hiding. It's positioning. Money never disappears during a recession. It simply relocates. It leaves luxury and flows toward necessity. It leaves speculation and flows toward value. It leaves trends and flows toward what solves real problems. Think about the 2008 crash. While real estate imploded, companies that sold groceries, hygiene products, and essentials continued thriving. During 2020, work-from-home tools, delivery services, health companies, and digital infrastructures exploded. The pattern is simple. The world may slow down, but people still eat, clean, communicate, work, and survive. For a believer who wants to make money wisely, this means studying which industries remain relevant during storms. Consumer staples, low-cost retailers, medical services, repair businesses, basic tech infrastructure, financial tools, and education platforms often remain stable or even grow. If someone runs a business, they can ask, how does my product or service meet a need that grows when fear grows? A simple shift, like adding a low-ticket offer, launching a subscription, or solving a practical pain point, can turn a downturn into a season of expansion. Investors also benefit from watching where stability hides. During crises, companies with strong cash flow, low debt, and consistent demand tend to outperform. Reading annual reports, checking balance sheets, and comparing long-term earnings gives you a clearer picture than any headline. Books like One Up on Wall Street and Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits help believers learn to analyze a company instead of guessing, because the goal isn't just to invest, it's to invest with understanding, as Proverbs repeatedly commands. But this isn't only about stocks. Many kingdom-minded entrepreneurs thrive in recessions by offering what I call mission services, solutions that make life easier or cheaper: car repair, tutoring, cleaning, digital freelancing, grocery delivery, budgeting coaching, producing online products, even selling used goods. These simple offerings explode during hard times. They're practical, accessible, and deeply impactful. A believer who sees business as service, not just profit, naturally discovers areas where people are still willing to spend money even when budgets shrink. And this leads to a deeper truth. Opportunity in a crisis is never random, it's always tied to service. When markets fall, the believer who focuses on helping people will always find doors that remain open. Because God doesn't hide opportunity during recessions, He hides it inside needs. And the moment you understand that needs become clearer during hardship, you start to see the next principle unfolding: growing without losing your heart in the process. Guarding your heart while you grow. Profiting without losing your soul. When money starts moving during a crisis and your opportunities expand, a new danger appears. Not in your bank account, but in your heart. Scripture warns us repeatedly that prosperity without grounding becomes a trap. First, Timothy 6:10 doesn't say money is evil, it says the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. That means the believer can make money, build business, and invest wisely, but must constantly check the motives behind each decision. Growth is a blessing. Greed is a distortion. Economic downturns create a strange spiritual tension. They expose both fear and ambition. Some believers shrink back in panic, while others rush forward with obsession. But neither extreme reflects kingdom wisdom. The wise investor learns to move with purpose, not desperation. They understand that making money is part of stewarding God's resources, but worshiping market gains is not. Proverbs 4:23 reminds us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. That includes your financial decisions in uncertain times. One of the best ways to guard your heart is to stay rooted in mission, not metrics. Before expanding a business or buying an investment, ask, does this align with who God is shaping me to become? If a deal requires compromising integrity, relationships, Sabbath, or peace, it's not from God, even if it seems profitable. The believer who understands this walks into opportunities with boldness, but keeps their soul anchored. Books like Business by the Book and God and Money help shape this internal compass. Practically speaking, guarding your heart also means setting boundaries. In a crisis, markets get noisy. Everyone becomes an expert. Every chart looks urgent, and every opportunity feels like now or never. That pressure pushes people into emotional decisions. But disciplined believers follow a plan. They use a budget, they automate investments, they avoid high-risk temptations, and they diversify. They give themselves time to think. They don't chase hype. They don't gamble. They make money with a calm spirit because chaos never dictates their moves. Generosity is another safeguard. Nothing protects a heart from greed like giving. When you tithe, bless someone privately, support a ministry, or help a family in crisis, you remind your soul that money serves the kingdom, not the other way around. It's no coincidence that the believers who continue giving in recessions are often the ones who experience supernatural provision and financial clarity. Luke 6:38 isn't just a verse. It's a financial principle grounded in spiritual reality. And here's the hidden beauty. When your heart stays aligned with God, opportunities feel lighter. You make decisions with peace, not pressure. You build your business with purpose, not panic. You invest with clarity, not confusion. Because the real test is never the recession, it's who you become inside it. And as we move into the final principle, the picture becomes even clearer. God doesn't just want you protected during the next downturn. He wants you prepared to move with confidence when it arrives. A kingdom crash plan. Practical steps to prepare before the next storm. Every believer wants to be blessed during a recession, but few prepare before it arrives. Yet preparation is one of the most biblical financial habits that exists. Proverbs 21:5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance." Notice, not the plans of the gifted, the wealthy, or the lucky, but the diligent. A kingdom crash plan isn't about predicting the future. It's about being faithful with what you have today. When the next downturn comes, you don't want to be scrambling. You want to be positioned. The first step in any crash plan is margin. Before crises hit, the believer strengthens their foundation, paying down high-interest debt, building an emergency fund, reducing unnecessary expenses, and getting clarity over their money. This simple margin creates freedom. With margin, you avoid panic selling. With margin, you avoid desperate decisions. With margin, you can actually make money when others are frozen. That's why Joseph stored grain. It wasn't glamorous, but it was strategic. The second step is education. A believer who never studies money is a believer who hands their future to chance. Read the book of Proverbs daily. Study one financial book per month. Titles like The Boglehead's Guide to Investing, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and The Total Money Makeover combine practical wisdom with mindset. Understand how business cycles work. Study companies with long-term stability and learn where opportunity tends to hide when markets fall. Knowledge turns chaos into clarity. The third step is disciplined investing. You don't wait for a crash to start investing. You invest consistently so that a crash becomes an opportunity, not a disaster. Use dollar-cost averaging. Diversify. Include stable long-term assets. Consider essential industries and businesses that continue serving people even in hardship. And always invest with understanding, never emotion. Slow, consistent contributions will outperform panic-driven strategies every single time. The fourth step is building or strengthening a recession-resistant business. Every believer has a skill, a gift, or an ability that can solve problems for others. Identify what people will still need during downturns: services, repairs, education, digital tools, essentials, or anything that reduces cost or increases convenience. Develop offerings at multiple price points so your business doesn't collapse when budgets shrink. When your mission is to serve, demand rarely disappears. Finally, a kingdom crash plan requires spiritual alignment. Pray over your finances. Dedicate your plans to God. Seek counsel. Stay generous even when fear comes knocking. A believer anchored in faith walks into storms differently. While others panic, you move wisely. While others freeze, you prepare. While others lose direction, you listen. Financial storms don't destroy kingdom thinkers, they reveal them. And that leads us to everything this journey has been building toward. Because once you finish this entire process, you'll be ready for the moment most people fear, but God uses to elevate the faithful. If you've made it this far, then you already know something most people never discover. Financial storms aren't the enemy, they're the revealer. They show you where your foundation really stands. And now that you understand how God works through cycles, how wisdom outperforms panic, and how opportunities hide inside downturns, the real question becomes simple. What are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you keep watching the news and letting fear dictate your decisions? Will you keep waiting for the perfect moment to start investing, organizing your money, or building the business God placed in your hands? Or will you finally step into the role of steward, someone who refuses to chase hype, but confidently makes money with purpose, discipline, and peace? Recessions will come. They always do. But now you're no longer someone who gets blindsided. You're someone who prepares, someone who listens, someone who sees what others miss. The tools are here. The wisdom is here. And God is ready to meet you in the work, because stewardship is worship, and excellence is a testimony. Write in the comments, "I claim clarity, discipline, and supernatural provision." And watch how this powerful declaration begins to shift the course of your business and your finances from this day forward. Before we wrap up, let me ask you directly. What's one step you can take today to align your finances with kingdom wisdom? Is it building your emergency fund? Cutting a harmful habit? Studying investments? Launching that business idea you've been sitting on? Or finally choosing to trust God more than market headlines? If this message spoke to your spirit, if it challenged you, encouraged you, or opened your eyes, then consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications. We'll keep walking this journey together because God cares about your faith, your future, and your finances. And this is just the beginning.